The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. I've been waiting months to do this episode, and now it's finally happened. I want to bring in both of our guests. It is a surprise to both of them. I have two very special, very cool people here today on Your Welcome, both returning guests. Brett, bring them in to the show. We have with us Ian Crossland. You might know him. He's one of the co-hosts on Timcast, and now he's got his own show. And Jake Angeli, who is the January 6th shaman and now candidate for political office. You guys are two of the most best psychonauts that I know. And I knew that if I had you both on at the same time, the internet would lose their mind and hopefully heal in a positive direction. I've got my Dr. Pepper ready to drink. So are you guys familiar with each other? Ian, I'm sure you know who Jake is. Jake, are you familiar with Ian?
No.
Okay, so
excellent. No, it's even better.
There's a show called Timcast, which is a popular nightly news show, and every night they have a different guest, and it's got a fairly big audience. Ian is one of the co-hosts, and the audience has a very big love-hate relationship with him because Ian is a very outside-the-box thinker, and especially the normies, they don't really know what to make of him. Is that fair to say, Ian?
I think so. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah. So my first question I had but before we get to Ian, Jake, I want to talk to you. Tell me about this campaign you're running and how people can support you. And you're wearing the perfect shirt, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking that, that's hilarious. Yeah, I am running for the 8th Congressional District here in Arizona. And I am running, it's U.S. Congress seat to be the representative of here in Arizona. And I'm running on 4 things. Number 1, single bill voting law. Number 2, an amendment for term limits.
Slow down. What is let's break down what these are. What's the single bill voting law?
So that means that no more omnibus bills, no more 2,000-page bills. Everything that they try to bring before the House floor must be a single bill issue. So if they want funding for Ukraine, single bill issue. They can't lump that together with a bunch of other stuff. If they want to do something like, the Green New Deal, they can't put a bunch of stuff in there that has nothing to do with infrastructure or with, the environment or whatever to fund their special interest groups. So everything has to be a single issue bill that has to be voted on. And the advantage to that is, actually there's several, but one of the biggest advantages is that it creates transparency, and based on whether or not people choose to vote for the bill, we will be able to decide and see which of the corporate sponsors, which special interest groups they are funding them in their campaign. So it's almost like NASCAR drivers wearing their corporate sponsors on their suit. You know what I'm saying? So that's a single bill voting law. And this would basically make it a law to where everything has to be a single bill issue. You can't do 2,000 pages. Now, a lot of the time when they do these 2,000-page bills, what they do is they give the congressman 24 or 48 hours to read 2,000 pages, and then they're like, now we're going to vote on it. I'm sorry, what? So a single bill voting law, it's like, okay, 24 to 48 hours to read 20 pages. That's a lot more realistic. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of advantages to it. Next would be the amendment for term limits for congressmen and staff, because oh yeah, dude, the staff are part, if not a large part of the problem. The congressmen are just the face for these bills that the staffers write. You know what I'm saying? And the staffers are like the handlers for the congressmen. I mean, we saw that most recently with Dick Durbin in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where his staffers are coming up and whispering stuff in his ear, and he's not allowing other people to talk about who they're going to appoint who basically give their reasons why they don't want certain judges appointed. So the staffers control things way more than the congressmen. The staffers are the ones that write the laws. So yeah, okay, you got term limits too. You gotta get out, after a certain amount of time. And the other part of that is this: when
Wait, can I interrupt you?
Oh yeah,
I got to interrupt you, Jake. I haven't heard either of these ideas in the zeitgeist in recent times, and I could not be more in favor of both of them. Like these are both like brilliant, great ideas that would go a long way towards solving the. And I'm for abolishing Washington, but my God, if you get rid of the staffers, like just like Diane, a better example, Jake, is Dianne Feinstein when she was literally a corpse. And it was during the Kavanaugh hearings where she's like, "Oh, what's going on?" Like Trump was even making fun of her. Ian, did you like these two ideas?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%, dude. What kind of limits on the staffing? How many years?
Oh, I think it should be like the president, 8 years.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, I also think it should be a felony if they don't read the law and they vote on it. Like they have to swear under oath that they read the bill before they vote.
Well, they're
They're
not going to be able to enforce that really, because who's going to be enforcing that law if they're the ones who are passing it? You know what I mean? What would be the third thing that you are of the four that you're advocating for?
Well, really quick though, I want to kind of finish up on the
Sure.
term limits thing, because when we talk about term limits, it's also about dismantling the corrupt apparatus within the Congress. And it is through Congress that the corrupt apparatus of the bureaucracy and the judicial system and all that stuff has been allowed to get so bad. So if you corrupt a congressman and then they're able to stay in power for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, then you have a placeholder of that corruption within the Congress for decades. And the thing about corruption and the centralization of power in our system is that it's not so much about corrupting the whole system. It's about corrupting key checks and balances portions within the system. Then you circumvent those checks and balances and centralized power becomes a reality. So that being the case, if you create an 8-year term limit for congressmen, then that means that they don't have the ability to stay in power and corrupt the system for decades. They have to find a new person. And this new person then has to basically be corrupted, but they can only do so much damage for 8 years, and then they got to find another one. So it makes the corrupt apparatus much more difficult to maintain. So that's part of it too. Now, the other part of it is the third aspect to this is the criminalization of lobbying. So a lot of these congressmen are corrupted due to lobbyists and due to special interest groups, non-government organizations, international corporations, the banking cartels, basically giving them money through lobbying. And then they end up doing the will of the NGOs, the international corporations, the special interest groups, and the international banking cartel. So that being said, if we criminalize lobbying, then that is yet another obstacle to the centralization of power and to the circumventing of the constitutional system. Because these congressmen are not doing the will of the people. They're doing the will of their donors, who are these NGOs and special interest groups and stuff like that. So you got to cut that off.
Hold on. Sometimes these donors and special interests are a lot smarter and have their shit together a lot better than the people. How are you going to criminalize lobbying with regards to the First Amendment? Because lobbying is just, I'm officially a lobbyist, but that means I sit down with senator, congressman, whatever, and I say, hey, we would really like this bill to be passed because, X, Y, and Z. Now, this could be bad stuff, of course, but it could also be like, hey, we want funding for these children's hospitals or this charity or something like that. I mean, and how do you ban it without blatantly ignoring the First Amendment?
Well, what it is that, for example, bribery is obviously a crime, correct?
Sure.
What they've done is they've just basically put a new label on it and they've called it lobbying, right? So what we are basically saying is that you as a congressman are not able to accept money from any outside source regarding certain bills that are going to be passed into law, because that could be considered bribery. You see, so we have to.
How would they fund?
What's
But
that?
how would they fund their campaigns? You just want to fund them like crowdfunding?
Well, yeah, dude. I mean, think about it. Like, dude, in my campaign, I'm not accepting any donations. I don't want people's money. I'm literally saying no to campaign donations of all kinds, especially from the people, because it's like, dude, you
Okay.
guys have it hard enough with inflation and stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't want your money. All I'm asking for is your support, your signatures, so I can get on the ballot, and your vote come election time. And the cool part about all those things, they're free. So by creating these obstacles to the slush funds that have become the DNC, the RNC, Congress, you are therefore forcing these congressmen to do the will of the people. Because if they don't do the will of the people, then why would they fund their campaign?
But yeah, Ian, what are your thoughts on this?
How do you hold up against like a really wealthy candidate that funds their own campaign? I think this was like argued in the 1800s. I don't remember who it was, but it was the first guy that was like, yo, why can't I use my own money to run my whistle stop campaigns on the trains? And they're like, actually, you can.
Right.
That's your legal right.
The thing is that as far as I can tell, there is going to be other obstacles along the way.
Sure.
However, what I'm doing with my campaign is I'm setting a precedent. I'm raising the bar. I'm changing the game. I'm saying this is how campaigns should be run. If you are the best candidate, if what you're saying is the best ideas, if your plan for dismantling corruption is the most strategically sound, then you will get in. I mean, the people will want you in. They will vote you in. They may even crowdsource or whatever. Now, when it comes to people that are, independently wealthy, for example, Donald Trump, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. However, when it comes right down to it, the best ideas should win, not the person with the most money. And most of the time when it comes to, campaigns, a lot of the time they spend so much money because of, number one, getting name recognition. So they spend a lot of money trying to get their name out there. Number two, they spend a lot of money on things like campaign advisors and political advisors. They spend a lot of money on things like mailers. So they go to corporations that print out these mailers for them, buying television ads and stuff like that. So yeah, there is that possibility for independently wealthy people to use their own money, which I say, yeah, that's fine. Because the thing is that if they lose, they lost all that money. You know what I'm saying? And if they're not going to do the will of the people, well, then there you go. That's what you get for trying to swindle the people. However, in my opinion, if somebody is independently wealthy, especially if they've earned it, because there is a difference between inherited wealth and, earned wealth. People that earn their wealth have a certain level of work ethic. They have a certain knowledge of business. They have a certain knowledge of how to be successful. And unfortunately, at this point, our government is a business. So it may not necessarily be a bad thing to have people that are independently wealthy serving the will of the people. However, and this is part of why I'm doing the things what I'm doing with my campaign, is that the best ideas should win. That is the gold. That is the real wealth for the people. And as long as we remove things like special interest groups from the picture, as long as we have single bill voting, as long as we criminalize lobbying, then it'll be much more difficult for corruption to take place, even if a person is independently wealthy.
Hey guys, did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? And if you wake up too hot or too cold, then I recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. They're inspired by NASA, and Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulated bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. They're thermoregulating, designed to keep you at the perfect temperature. You get better sleep every night. Infused with silver, the sheets are. They prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. They stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer. No more gross odors. I know a little bit about that. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag for other luxury brands. Feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping in bacteria, which can clog your pores, which causes breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Here's what you got to do. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try today or gift it to somebody special this holiday season. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Save over 40%. And if you use our promo code Malice at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code Malice to claim your 3-piece towel set for free and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself, a friend, or loved one this holiday season. Let's get back to the show. But can I
get the vibe.
Hold on. I've in the recent couple of months completely given up on this idea that the best ideas should win, because this enlightenment idea that if you present all the facts in a straightforward manner, that people will come to good rational conclusions, to me has been completely debunked and is absurd. And a good example of this is right now, if you ask the will of the people, they will tell you that children should be vaccinated against COVID in perpetuity. And let's break this down. This means that a disease that they can't get, they should get shots, which hurts, and even pretend there's no side effects. The child is getting a jab every 6 months for the rest of their life for a disease they can't even get. That's the will of the people. The will of the people in California is that if I'm a little boy and I like dolls or I like watching Drag Race, then let's get me on puberty blockers or something like that. So I am just really, really skeptical of this kind of enlightenment idea that the will of the people is in any sense always a good conclusion and should be done. And when you have the will of the people implement in law, that means some people are going to get crushed under that will. And it's often people that I like and appreciate. And a very obvious example is the will of the people is that anyone who does drugs other than marijuana should be in jail. And that's just, to me, psychotic.
Well, I agree entirely. But the thing is that what has happened is, number one, the people have largely been uneducated and uninformed. So if the people are educated and informed, then we will have a whole different quote unquote will of the people. Now, Benjamin Franklin said a democracy is 2 wolves and a lamb voting on what's for dinner, and a republic is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. So I think that we have to arm people with knowledge and education. And so this is a war for the mind. And I also believe that the Mockingbird media has created the illusion that this is the will of the people, putting children on puberty blockers, injecting children with mRNA gene therapy and stuff like that. They've created the illusion that that is the case. It really is not the case. If you look at California, for example, the vast majority of the counties in California are red. It's only the massive major cities that are blue. And so now you have these massive major corrupt cities dictating the lives of all the people in the rural areas of California that want nothing to do with this crap. So that is another level to the corruption, is how it is on a state level and stuff like that. So what we want to do is set the precedent in the federal government of this is the way that it is. And the best idea winning isn't necessarily the will of the people. What it is that the best ideas are ones that unite people, not divide them, are ones that give them free choice, the ones that give them liberty and prosperity, not ones that dictate their lives or their moral standing in society based on talking points that are handed to us by the CIA and the Mockingbird media. It is a complex issue somewhat, but the issues themselves are easily diffused if you understand them on a grassroots or the root of the problem level. And the root of the problem is that the corrupt apparatus in DC is now dictating to we the people the way that we have to live our lives, because the people that are in power are using the government's monopoly on the initiation of force to push their quote unquote moral agenda. And it's anything but, like you were saying about puberty blockers and stuff like that. So I just think that most of the time people don't know what good ideas are because nobody's saying anything that's worth saying. That I once heard us saying something like the way you move up in government is you never say no to a bad idea, and that's pretty much what we're dealing with.
Ian, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, my concern with the best ideas being adopted is that it's more realistically the most popular
Yeah.
ideas get adopted. And that if who controls the media or who has the megaphone is the one that makes the idea popular, and if the people is a corporation with proprietary code that's using algorithms to twist certain topics behind the scenes, like even AI, but that's just, or a human just being like, we're going to downrank or blacklist this word
Yeah.
whenever it pops up in a title, that it's how do you, I mean, I'm all about building decentralized uncensorable systems like Nostr and like using the Fediverse to get ideas out there. But then there's Verizon that owns the, you know, the ISPs. There's the power grids themselves, which can be shut off. Like, how do you propagate? How do you ensure to propagate the best idea? And I mean, how do you even figure out what that is?
Well, I think because when the truth is spoken, it is not just heard, it is also felt. And when people feel the truth resonate in their heart, it is, you can't ignore it. It's undeniable. That's why, for example,
Well, hold on. No. I got to interrupt you
okay.
because you of all people are proof that this is not the case, because there is a huge percentage of this country who thinks that you personally should be in jail for the rest of your life, that you tried to have a coup, that you're some kind of evil fascist, and all this other stuff. You hear this every 5 minutes. You were put in jail for completely insane reasons. You were put in solitary for absolutely no reason. I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm saying that if you, the reaction you get from the people, the ones you talk to who get to know you are like, okay, they understand. But you're talking about, if you look at America as a whole, the number of people who think you're kind of the symbol of something demonic is through the roof.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but what we're talking about here now is psychological warfare and optics.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
in order for us to change things, what we have to understand is that we have to get to the core of the issue, which is the war is over the heart and the mind, and essentially
Right.
people's mental, syntactical, cognitive grasp of reality. And the only way to do that is to put yourself out there over and over and over and over again and put your
Okay.
message out there. For example, every single person that I've talked to, whether it be a Republican or Democrat, Libertarian or Green Party, Independent, whatever, when I tell them what my campaign platform is and what my promises are, all of them are like, well, yeah, I can get behind that. I agree with that. So this is what I mean when I say the best ideas win. This is what I mean when I say that the truth, when it's not just heard, it's also felt. So the real issue is that we're in a crisis of lack of good ideas, and it's because good ideas would disrupt the status quo, and the people that have been propped up for the people to follow are the people that reinforce the status quo. And that's because of the NGOs, the special interest groups, et cetera, that are funding their campaigns that profit from the status quo. So I understand where you're coming from, but what we're talking about here is the nuance and the difference between a propaganda campaign and a campaign of truth. Like Gandhi said, even if you're a minority of one, the truth is the truth. And I forgot, I think it was maybe Voltaire that said, the truth is like a lion. You don't need to defend it, just set it loose and it will defend itself. So I think that the real crisis here is a crisis of consciousness, and the Mockingbird media is creating a illusory world for people to live in that divides the country based on emotional issues, things that invoke instinctual responses in the subconscious mind. So when somebody like myself, who's been maligned by the Mockingbird media, gets an opportunity to actually talk to the people, and by the way, everybody that I've talked to, both in prison, out of prison, on podcasts, in my community, when they figure out who I am and when they actually listen to me, they're like, dude, like, I like you. And why did the media say all this stuff? Like you're nothing like they said. So this creates that cognitive dissonance that is necessary in order to dismantle this corrupt, illusory system.
What do you think, Ian?
I get kind of nervous about that concept of the truth. They say the truth, like who defines the truth? What is the truth? Is it objective? Is it like, I think of the thing often, like you walk up on the beach and there's a marking in the sand. It looks like a 6, but to the guy coming towards you from the other direction, he's like, that's a 9. And you're like, well, it looks like a 6. And you're both correct. You're both telling the truth, but there's different perceptions of the objective reality. And whichever one is adopted by more people, we tend to think that is the truth. That's the one we're all going to agree. The Earth is, like 500 years ago, the Earth is flat. The Earth is the center of the solar system 1,000 years ago. Like, that is the truth,
Wait,
and it was.
Ian, let me ask you. Oh, sorry.
So, oh no, go for it.
I want to ask Ian this thing, because here's more, and then I want Jake's thought. My concern is that I agree with what Jake is saying in the main, but my concern is there is a huge amount of people in the population, and I don't know the number, and I agree with you completely. If you are brought up in government schools and then handed over to the corporate press to get your view of politics, life, and reality, you're going to be in Wonderland. It's just going to be completely divorced from what I would regard as decency or normalcy or reality. But I'm concerned that there is a large percentage of the population, and I don't have a number, but it's a scary number, that giving them the truth and facts and information at the end of the day is like giving a guy in a wheelchair a really great pair of Nikes. Like, yeah, it's great and it's useful, but it's going to be, he's not going to have any need for them and not going to know what to do with them, even if he had them. So Ian, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think that there's a lot of people for whom truth is almost irrelevant?
Yeah, they call it cognitive dissonance. Like, they'll hear it, but it won't affect them. And maybe they've got to hear it 80 times. I mean, Edward Bernays is obsessed with manipulation and propaganda, and you got to propagandize people with your version of the truth too.
Right.
And also, like, well, yeah, I guess that's
well, but here's the thing. So what you're talking about, the 6 and the 9 thing, that's a really good analogy. How I like to look at it is, if you hang a cylinder on a string from the ceiling, and then you shine a flashlight from one side,
right,
the shadow on the wall is going to be a rectangle, and the other side, it's going to look like a circle. And then, so the Mockingbird media is based on this: it's a circle, no, it's a rectangle; it's a circle, no, it's a rectangle. And the fact is, it's both and it's neither. What the true dimensions, the truth is, it is a cylinder, and the truth has multiple dimensions. Now, the question is, how is it that we get people to see that it's both and neither a rectangle or a circle, that it's actually a cylinder? How do we get them to see the dimensions of the truth? And I think that the answer is yes, cognitive dissonance does play a very large role. However, cognitive dissonance is necessary when people are living a lie. The only people that get upset when you speak the truth are those that are living a lie. So what has to happen is that, first of all, and this kind of comes into this notion of, like, you know, psychedelic therapy and stuff, is that people have to recognize that their view of reality is subjective. In psychological warfare, there are 3 versions of the universe. There is the collective objective universe. That's the universe as it exists for itself beyond human perception. Then there's the personal subjective universe. That is the individual perceiving the collective objective universe, but through their subjective lens and interpreting it through syntax and cognition the way that they perceive it. And then lastly is the collective subjective universe. And that is where you have a bunch of people with a similar personal subjective universe collaborating together, concretizing their subjective view of reality, existing in an echo chamber, and reinforcing their illusory view of the world.
Like the zeitgeist.
Yes. And religion, politics, schooling, you know, education, all that stuff, it basically does that to people, is it puts them in these compartmentalized subjective universes that they control, that the powers that be control. So for example, when somebody consumes large amounts of, say, ayahuasca or psychedelic mushrooms, or even cannabis for that matter, what happens is that the syntactical portions of the brain that process reality, that cognize the world, end up becoming disrupted. And then they actually get a very real, raw, objective view of reality that goes beyond syntax, it goes beyond the use of words, and it forces the individual to examine things objectively. And they begin to realize that the world that they are perceiving is not the world as it actually is. Because if such a thing is possible by eating, 5 grams of mushrooms, or, eating a half a gram of hashish or something like that, then lo and behold, oh my God, what else is possible? What lies have I believed? So the media actually has a very important role to play here. Can you imagine? Just think about this. Imagine the kind of world we would live in if the Mockingbird media was spamming truth instead of lies. If the social media sites were actually not censoring people and allowing truth to come through and allowing people to make up their minds for themselves. Imagine the kind of world we would live in if we were not being lied to routinely for decades. You see what I'm saying? So it is necessary for the Mockingbird media to do what it is that they should be doing, and that is hold government accountable, that is bring the truth to the people, etc. The question is, will that ever happen? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about disclosing truth. Like there's the truth, it doesn't mean like if you say nothing, sometimes you're still telling the truth. Like, well, Jordan Peterson actually tweeted out, if you have something to say and you don't say it, you're lying. But I think that sometimes you use discretion, that like certain things like high-tech military weaponry, you don't want to put on the internet and be like, hello, everyone, including the CCP and the Russian government. Here's how you make a neutron, implosion tactic thing that you don't want to give them your highest tech weaponry. And so you have to maybe either like ignore putting the truth out. Like, I don't think it's always good to say everything that is real all the time. So like, where do you draw the line? Like, what do you decide to hide from the common man? The whole is the collective.
Well, that's a very good question. I'm a believer in the notion of certain technologies being disclosed to the public. So we were talking before about like, the infrastructure, the communication towers, the cell phone towers and all that stuff, and how it is that information is relayed, and how there are certain corporations like Verizon or whatever, they have a monopoly on these things. They can censor people, etc. So the solutions that I have are actually multi-leveled and multifaceted. Going back to my campaign platform, the final thing is 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for insider trading. And then after we've laid out all of these things, so single bill voting, term limit amendment for congressmen and staff, criminalizing lobbying, 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for insider trading, we're going to get into other things like disclosure. And then we will decide which things are necessary to give to the public so that we can create a decentralized grid. For example, Nikola Tesla, he came up with an infinite, free, clean form of wireless electricity over 100 years ago that we should be and could be using right now to create a decentralized grid where our energy isn't metered. We could also use these towers to create a communication grid that is not owned and controlled by less than 1% of the population. And these things are very real. These things are very applicable to our society and will actually create massive amounts of economic growth and surplus. So that is a patent right there that I think that should be disclosed to the public, where the benefits outweigh the possible cost, or the benefits outweigh whatever possible damage could be done. Now, another example would be Donald Trump just in 2020 released the 3 patents. I don't know if you're aware of this, Ian, but number 1 was a room temperature superconductor. Another one was a 0-point energy engine, and another one was a TR-3B inertia propulsion or anti-gravity craft. So the military has had these things for decades, okay? But they haven't disclosed them to the public because they were creating vehicles that were like another level up. So this is how the disclosure stuff has to work, is where what you do is you get to a really high level of technology, and then you begin to release the lower levels of technology because you already have superior tech that isn't necessarily going to be disclosed to the public and would not be compromised by the disclosure of this lower level technology.
Yeah, when I think about giving people unlimited electricity, like you were mentioning Tesla's free energy stuff, like if every human had unlimited electricity, would one of them just, oops, I dropped it on the ground and blow everything up? Like, I do believe there's a reason we need to keep, like, I think of humans as like wild animals that we've kind of domesticated ourselves, but we're still like, if they get hungry, they go crazy. And so like, if they all have access to infinite destructive capability, I would imagine we're doomed.
Because
so like,
all it would take is
to hide
1 out of a million, which there's certainly more than 1 out of a million people who are homicidal psychopaths. They're called politicians.
I understand what you're saying.
Hey folks, Michael Malice here, tolerated author, Twitter asshole, and sheath underwear model. I love wearing sheath. I wear it every single day. They're the most comfortable briefs you'll ever wear. And I'm currently designing a new pair of sheath based on a certain type of fish, which you'll see in the coming months. Every time you hear my voice, you should know I'm wearing sheath. And what makes sheath different is that they have dual pouch technology. They have one pouch for one part of your male anatomy, another pouch for another part of your male anatomy. Sounds weird, but when you put them on, they're going to be super comfortable. They keep you cool in the hot weather, keep you nice and snug in an interview, on a date, doing a podcast, so on and so forth. After you tried sheath, you're never going back to the other brands. Support the underwear that supports you. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code MALICE, 20% off. They've got shirts, they've got hoodies, they've got mesh ones. They have something for you. They also have a girls line, but since women aren't allowed to listen to the show, I can't help you. Sheathunderwear.com, promo code Malice. Folks, cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. I'm not talking about some weird mind voodoo for my crazy neighbor. You know who it is. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, F-U-M, and they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? And Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, they use all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. And your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting. So it gives your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. Stopping is something a lot of people put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason it can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use code Malice to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com. Use code Malice to save 10% off your order today. You know Dave Smith and his Very Failed podcast and how he's always playing around with that device of his. Do you want to be like him? Of course not. It's a disaster. Tryfume.com. Use promo code Malice and get control of your bad habit. Don't be like Dave. Let's get back to the show.
But here's the thing. So we are living in a society that is based on a parasitic relationship with each other and on nature. And if we make resources infinite, then war becomes obsolete. Then things like pollution and mining and stuff.
Wait, hold on, Jake. Wait. That is absolutely, wait. You're telling me that there aren't plenty of people who want war simply because they want war? We live in a world where people beat and torture their own children for no reason.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm getting at is that is based on a cultural paradigm which has been handed to us that is based on parasitism, dominance, and predation. And so what I'm suggesting, what's that?
I said right. I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. So what I'm suggesting is that what we need to do is create a parallel economy and a parallel culture. And we give people the option of which one they wish to live in. They can either live in the old mega cities and, they continue to pollute their environment, drink fluoride water, eat pesticide-ridden food, breathe polluted air, etc. Or they can come over to this other new city where energy is infinite. The culture itself is based on symbiosis with each other and with the environment, where communication towers are free and that you don't have to per se pay a bunch of money so you can use the Verizon wire towers or whatever. And the economy would be booming because, like I said, if you have most of our wars are fought over resources. So if you make resources infinite, then war essentially becomes obsolete. And when it comes to what you're saying about war, what we're talking about is less than 1% of the population that wants war. Okay. And when we talk about what's going on, for example, in Ukraine or what's going on in the Middle East, what we have is corrupt governments controlled by the same globalist entities fighting one another, and the people are in the crosshairs. Very rarely do the people themselves actually want to go to war. You see what I'm saying? So what we have to do is we have to dismantle that corrupt apparatus. We have to give people an option of, you can either participate in something that is symbiotic, or you can participate in something that is parasitic. You can participate in war and chaos and famine, or you can participate in peace, stability, and productivity, abundance. And I think everybody's going to, the majority of the populations are going to choose the latter, not the former.
When I think about like resource distribution, I'm fully on board with you that the more access we have to food, clean water, warmth, things like that, the less we'll fight with each other. But then, and you could even build if we have enough electricity, you could make molecular printers that can print oil, they can print water, they can print food out of the atoms that you coagulate. But the problem is, if we set up like a solid state energy system where there's always electricity in the vacuum that we're always using, AI will never be able to be turned off. And that will be locked into like the Borg, essentially.
Well, actually, that's kind of what they're going for now with all these cell phone towers and the harvesting of our biometric data. You see, I understand what you're saying and you're concerned, but with Tesla towers, what we're talking about is the harnessing of the 0-point energy field and the massive amounts of electromagnetic activity that already exist in the Earth's electromagnetic field become accessible to us. And we can then use that to communicate, etc. AI is based on a very narrow bandwidth of that electromagnetic spectrum. And so what is attempting to be done is that they're trying to lock us into that very narrow bandwidth of that electromagnetic spectrum, and then harvest all of our data, harvest our biometrics, harvest our, getting on the internet and changing the code of the internet, and feed that AI hive mind, that Borg hive mind. What we have to do is go outside of that system, create a new system that actually in one way or another kind of fuses with human consciousness. So because our electromagnetic field too is resonating on all electromagnetic frequencies, basically, we affect all frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum. Because of that, we need a system that also does that we can merge our consciousness with on a spiritual level, not necessarily on a hardware level, like, say, for example, Elon Musk and Neuralink and stuff like that. That's transhumanism. We don't want to go down that road. What we want to do is recognize the interconnected nature, the quantum entangled nature of reality itself, and then build our society based on that interconnected understanding.
Ian, thoughts?
I was thinking about DMT. I was like, what psychedelic should we do? What is the one to do that? Because like psilocybin helped me get there. I saw Outside of Gravity with DMT. Like I saw my buddy getting sucked down to earth after I puffed on it. And I was like, whoa, he would look like a wildly different without it. But like, I agree that if we had a psychedelic or a psychological revolution, that it would be a basis for the change. But how do you propose that you like, is this maybe this is the solution, this kind of conversation? I don't know.
Well, yeah. So dialogue. Okay. So look at, oh, my dog is barking. I'm so sorry. 1 second.
Dog's into it, dude. The dog is feeling the vibes in the Schumann resonance.
So
literally,
this is how I kind of look at what you're saying. It's actually a multi-leveled approach, because some people just aren't going to do they're not going to eat the mushroom. They're not going to smoke the DMT. They're not going to eat the cannabis. They're not going to do any of that. So what we have to do is create a multi-tiered, multi-leveled approach to the ascension of human consciousness. And if we look at human history, we see, okay, how did evolutionary adaptation take place? We see that, number one, it started out with social and environmental pressures, making life intolerable, right? And then these social and environmental pressures ended up creating windows of opportunity in the dimensions of space and time that allowed us to grow if we simply walk through them. Now, a lot of the time, self-selected individuals or groups of individuals would end up figuring out a way to circumvent these social and environmental pressures through usually three things. Number one is creating a new tool that allows them to circumvent the pressure. Number two is creating a new mental model of reality that allows them to do so. Or number three, the employing of a new form of behavior. And a lot of the time, these things are kind of intertwined. And then the individual ends up developing the new tool, mental model, or form of behavior. They walk through this window of opportunity that has been created by these social and environmental pressures. And then when they do so, they thrive in what was normally an intolerable environment. And then the people, the tribe, the group ends up looking and saying, well, that person is thriving. I want to thrive too. I'm going to do what they're doing. So then they begin to use the new tool, the new mental model, the new form of behavior to circumvent the pressure. And this ends up changing the mental processes. This ends up changing the thought patterns and the speech patterns, the dialogue in the culture, in the system. So then if we look at what we're dealing with now, we have the technology, whether it be Tesla Towers, Dr. Rife and his machine, or it be things like precious metal backed currency or what have you, the TR3B for transportation. Then we have other things like the new mental model of reality. We're all starting to cognize the deep state, the high levels of corruption, et cetera. And the new form of behavior is non-compliance, is nonviolent non-cooperation. And all of these three things are going to be used together. Now, we could also view something like psilocybin or DMT as though it is both a tool and it leads to a new mental model of reality. And then it also modifies our behavior based on this evolution in consciousness. And I think that you're more likely to get people to prescribe to 15 minutes of eternity than 6 hours of eternity. So I think that maybe injecting or smoking DMT would probably be more along the lines of what would cause the evolution in consciousness and help people to see beyond the veil. More so than things like psilocybin or peyote or ayahuasca, because these things last hours and not everybody's ready for that. But once that breach has been made, once the consciousness has been expanded, you can't put it back in the box.
One of the things I want to talk about is
say something?
as so many more veterans are being open about using psychedelics in various forums to treat their PTSD. Rick Perry, who was former governor of Texas, who's hardly some kind of stoner, has now become very pro psychedelics and legalization because his daughter was a vet and it worked for her. What I'm hearing from friends of mine is their mom or their grandma is like, tell me more about this stuff. Like they want to dip their foot in the water because they're realizing what they've been propagandized since the reaction against the hippies, whose worst crime, well, that's not true. They did a lot of fucked up things, but one of their worst crimes is that they were against the war in Vietnam. And for this, they must be demonized. And obviously they're the scum of the earth. And in retrospect, it's like, okay, so, maybe they were a little hedonistic and all this other stuff, but they sure got that one right. As that's becoming normalized, I think it's very hard if you just take psychedelics once and then you look at something like the Today Show or Good Morning America, where these people have these completely soulless, demonic grins, and we're having such a great time. Aren't we happy? We're up at 7 a.m, having fun. Just very normal to be up at 7 a.m, having a great time with my guests, promoting the latest shitty movie. It's really hard to look at that and look at it as face value, as opposed to something which is from hell and completely soulless, completely artificial, and completely manipulative. And once, as you said, Jake, you cross that Rubicon, you can't go back. And it becomes like dominoes when you see how much of what is around us is there in terms of manipulation. Now, that manipulation isn't always bad. Some of this manipulation is like, hey, be respectful to people, think of others, hold the door. Like there's that kind of propaganda. And I think that stuff is wonderful. But the other stuff is, Marx talked about how religion's the opiate of the masses, in the sense that what he meant is people are going to be accepting to be completely miserable and downtrodden now, with the promise in his eyes of a fake, afterlife. But there's a lot of the real opiate of the masses is the corporate press, where it's just like, your life is a hamster wheel. And isn't that great? Because you get to go home and watch The Big Bang Theory. And I think that there's just so much more for so many people, even that guy in the wheelchair with the Nikes. Ian, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I had sort of an awakening in 06, 2007, 2008, those 3 years. And it was kind of like, it wasn't quite like once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It was like I was rubber banding in and out of seeing it. Like the people that were smiling when they weren't happy, for instance.
Yes.
That took me like 5 years to really realize. And what helped me was I watched myself on YouTube video that I was making YouTube videos, and I would see myself smiling. And I was like, I wasn't happy when I was making that video. why am I can see that I'm smiling. And that shook me out of it. There was like a day in 2013 where I was like, whoa. And I almost killed myself in those years, figuring like going in and out of it and seeing it and then being like, well, no, but that can't be real. I can't, that's my mother. That can't be real. Like that's Becky, like Crossland. She's legit. Like, why? And it just took me some time, and it especially helped me to see myself experiencing it, the fake happiness or the face value, I guess.
I had the opposite experience. When my mother saw me, she wanted to kill herself.
Yeah, I don't blame her. I actually love her. I was going to say another good thing too.
Go ahead, please.
I don't remember it. I'll remember it.
Folks, gold has soared past $2,000 an ounce. The wars in Israel and Ukraine, as well as rate cuts that are on the table, are fueling gold's meteoric rise. Deutsche Bank, UBS, Bank of America, JP Morgan, they're all forecasting sizable rate cuts in an election year. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, Larry Fink of BlackRock, they point out similarities to the 70s. In 1979, we had the Iran hostage crisis, war in the Middle East, and major cities in disarray and stagflation. Gold went from $158 an ounce in 74 to $850 an ounce in 1980. Meanwhile, our national debt is skyrocketing ever higher. There's a direct correlation to the national debt and the price of gold. In 2020, the U.S. debt was $23 trillion and gold was $1,500 an ounce. In 2023, the national debt is $33 trillion and gold is over $2,000 an ounce. Donald Trump warned that the U.S. dollar is no longer being the world standard, and that will be our greatest defeat in 200 years. So here's what you can do. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention my name. That's Michael Malice. And you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots, protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. All you have to do is call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide today, or even easier, just go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. So just call 888-505-9845 or go to malicegold.com. Protect your money against the Fed and inflation.
I'm Walter Masterson.
And I'm Maximilian Clark.
And we're basically journalists.
No, we're not.
Well, we do travel across America and interview people.
Yeah, using God to solve murders, and it's proven communication.
Tell me everything about that.
But we also dress up like extremists and sneak into their protests.
I care about children. That is why I pay my court-mandated child support.
Well, that's undercover journalism.
Okay, and that time we pretended to be Trump's legal team during the indictment?
Trump loves America. He considers us all family. That's why he's always asking us for money.
Okay, so we are not journalists. We're TikTok comedians asking questions real journalists are too smart to ask.
But we also talk to real experts and scientists and smart people and stuff.
And make fun of them.
Yeah, I guess that's why we named our show We Are Not Journalists.
Because we're better. We have a podcast.
A podcast that's available on whatever podcast app you use to get your podcasts.
Podcasts.
Let's get back to the show. Jake, what's your fourth prong of your platform?
Well, yeah, that's the
go ahead, Ian.
seven-figure fines.
Ian, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ian.
I was thinking about, you were talking about evolution and when environmental, changes in the environment will force people to evolve. And that actually tracks on like a primordial level in like the tide pools. You'd have like, the water, you have layers of water going down into the lake. And at one level, for instance, the oxygenation would shift and it would become very acidic at that level. And all these cells would start to die, except a small group of them would all come together to form this new pseudo-organism that would then float up to another strata of the tide pool where there was more oxygen. And those would be the ones that survive as this new almost organism. Like they've come together to create a new organism, and humans are kind of doing that right now. I don't know if we necessarily need to pick a path of how to do it, but like I found psychedelics were a huge part of it for me. But then a lot of it was about the communication itself. Like what coincided with me taking psychedelics was also making internet videos. It was like 2003. I smoked pot for the first time. 2006, I made my first internet video, and like with all MDMA therapy, it's about the communication. The psychedelics are just there as like here's a little oil in the grease in the machine, but like you're the machine. You're fixing yourself with your behavior. So the internet video communication, I think people being able to see themselves talking, and they can see how fake they are, that like just shocks people out of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I think that when it comes to people and this notion of cognitive dissonance, we have to recognize what Yuri Bezmenov was talking about regarding demoralization. Are you guys familiar with Yuri Bezmenov?
Very much
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Yes. You're talking to the
So
right
he was
audience.
basically, what's that?
You're talking to the right audience.
Oh, cool. Good. Thank God. I'm tired of having to explain all this stuff. So what he was talking about was that, like, even if you bring people evidence in black and white, you show them the pictures, you show them the video footage, you show them, the concentration camps in communist countries, they will not believe it because they've been lied to all their lives, and the cognitive dissonance would be so profound that they would reject the messenger and the message before accepting
Wait, hold
the
on.
truth.
Hold on. I have to argue with you a little bit, Jake. I think what it is they do not perceive information unless it's fed to them by certain sources that they defer to. So if I tell them something and they think I'm an asshole, whatever, in one ear out the other. If you tell them you're an insurrectionist, in one ear out the other. If Chris Cuomo or Don Lemon tells them, it's the gospel truth. So they perceive truth not as a function of data, but as a function of who said it. And if that person said it, John Oliver, that's good enough for me. And it's when you realize that this is how many people, including people, conservatives, certain conservatives, when you realize this is how people process truth or false, then it saves yourself a lot of stress, because they will. Here's a very obvious example. There is a huge percentage of the population who will tell you with a straight face that Trump was praising white nationalists in Charlottesville. And you can play them the tape where he explicitly says, and I'm not talking about the white nationalists who must be condemned totally. That's the soundbite. They will literally, people can't get this to their head, literally not perceive it. It's just white noise to them. It's so when you realize, because we're brought up in school thinking that we're all basically the same, and maybe Jake likes cheese and I like sushi, and Ian likes to eat something else, or one likes basketball, one likes football, but we're all basically the same underneath. And when you realize that's not true at all, the human mind perceives and accepts truth in drastically different ways, that really undoes a lot of this kind of programming.
Well, I understand what you're
I've noticed
saying.
that.
I understand. I think education is what a lot of it comes down to, because what you're basically saying is that people have been trained, like Pavlov's dog, to trust authority, and that they will trust authority before they trust their own common sense.
Yes.
And
Ian, what were you going to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. I mean, it is totally reinforcing what you guys are saying. I don't want to derail. I want to add to it. I tweeted that out yesterday, that like, if you like a post on the internet because of who said it and not because of the content of the post, you're in a cult.
Yeah.
Shock yourself out of that. You don't have to like everybody. Yeah. Go for the content.
But I guess, Jake, where you and I might disagree is, I was just going to, where you and I might disagree is, I don't know if this is Pavlov's dog will never be able to read a book, right? So the question is, if Pavlov's dog wasn't trained, is that dog still going to have the capacity to be Pavlov? And my gut and my data is telling me no, that these people who only receive information from authority, a big chunk of them, there is no alternative. You can't save them.
Well, part of the reason I have such faith in humanity is because there was a time where I too was on that same level of trusting of authority. I used to be a W. Bush supporter. I used to support the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I thought everything that my dad said was gospel. You know what I'm saying? I thought everything Rush Limbaugh said was gospel. So, for me, I experienced the cognitive dissonance. I came to this realization that I didn't know the truth and that I wanted to know what it was. It's like, okay, well, son of a bitch, what is the truth? I want to know the truth. And then the fact that I was living in a society based on lies actually caused a thirst and hunger for the truth that was insatiable. And every time I found a new nugget of truth, I would digest it and memorize it because I really wanted to know what the F was going on. So I think that I understand where you're coming from. What I think it is that you can't force anybody to do it. They have to willingly do it. And that a lot of the time is going to be difficult because the same portions of the brain that process physical pain also process mental and emotional pain. And cognitive dissonance is mental and emotional pain. You are literally challenging a person's view of reality. So it's painful for them psychically, like in their brains, like it's painful. But I think that at this point, we're living in such a fake society, and everybody is starting to get so sick and tired of it that they're like, I just want to know the truth. I just want to know what's really going on.
No, everybody? No fucking way. There's lots of people
I don't think everybody. The question,
you said everybody.
Michael, what it's about is a large enough portion of the population.
Okay.
It's like the 100th monkey effect.
Very different.
You know what I'm saying?
That's very different than everybody.
Yeah, the 100th monkey's that hypothetical or theoretical. It may be real too, that the monkeys on one island where one monkey started washing their sweet potatoes before they would eat them. And then all these monkeys on the island she showed the other monkeys, they started washing their sweet potatoes. Then monkeys hundreds or thousands of miles away on other islands started washing their sweet potatoes, like this collective consciousness, critical mass.
Yes. And that is what we're dealing with on the planet, you guys, and that's what the propaganda apparatus is for, is to control that collective mind by fracturing it into these compartmentalized groups of warring tribes. So that's why with my campaign, what I'm attempting to do and what I am doing is I'm creating a platform and a message that is unifying, that everybody can agree on. No matter what side of the political aisle you are on, you can agree that these 4 things must take place in Washington, D.C. in order for the people to be accurately represented. And that will change. I mean, it's already changing things. Frickin' Matt Gaetz, dude. I did an interview on Newsmax where I talked about my campaign platform over 2 weeks ago. And I talked about the 4 things that I'm doing. And shortly thereafter, not even like a couple of days later, Matt Gaetz is talking about doing a bill for single bill voting law. And then he introduced a anti-corruption plan that was a plan that talked about term limits, that talked about criminalizing of lobbying or getting rid of lobbying and getting rid of insider trading. All 3 of these things are in his anti-corruption plan, okay, that just so happens to come out like right after I do this interview and I say that nobody in DC is doing their dang job. So affecting the collective consciousness is what religion's about. It's what politics is about. It's what propaganda is about. It's what entertainment is about. So we have to realize that the real battlefield is right here. It's the mind, the hearts and the minds of the people. And when enough people wake up to that, when enough people begin to fathom and grasp the totality of the truth, then the entirety of the consciousness shifts on the planet. And we basically move ourselves toward a different collective destiny that is not ruled by less than 1% of the population.
I get the vibe that it's the brain, the heart, and the stomach of the people that are changing, and it's each of those is its own kind of brain. They're like neural. There's lots of neurons in the brain, in the heart, and in the stomach, and they're connected. And I think through evolution, we started off as a stomach, and that was our brain. We went around the pool just consuming, and then we grew up this new head, which was the heart. And then over evolution, we grew forward, and then we got this thyroid thing, which was. And then we grew another brain on, I mean, this is just my guess, is that's the thing, is the stomach comes first, then the heart. And I mean, you see it in the dietary system with like things that are wiping out gut biomes, pharmaceuticals, synthetic chemicals and sugars and all these things that are going into the food supply, messing up people's endocrine systems. But I think a lot of it starts in the gut, because like you were saying, cognitive dissonance hurts. I think it hurts the most in the gut. It definitely hurts in the heart. Like that, it hurts my heart to think that what I think is real is not real. Like, but I think it really hurts the gut. Like, it makes me want to puke.
Yeah. I've spoken to people. Hold one sec, quickly. I've spoken to people who are on the show Survivor, where they're starving, but they know they're at any moment they can be rescued and leave the game, so they're not really in concern for not having enough food. And I've spoken to people who are refugees in North Korea, where food was a constant concern, and historically speaking, about famines where people like eat their own kids. So I agree with you completely, Ian. When that stomach is in crisis mode, the cognitive brain is out the window. The only concern is food, and any semblance of humanity, or what any of us would consider human, is really just not even on the table. The only thing that's on the table is I have to get food, and your entire psychology becomes something completely alien to what any of us have ever experienced.
I wonder if people are actually starving, even though they eat a lot of what's being sold to them. They're still in a starvation process because the stomach's not getting the right nutrition.
That is 100% correct. 100%, because there's no actual real nutrition being given to the body.
Yeah, you know what I would recommend to every guy watching this, and this is a majority of males, take a magnesium supplement, because the amount of men who do not get enough magnesium is through the roof, and it has profound effects on your depression, anxiety, sense of self. I take it every day, and it's been a lifesaver for me. Worst case scenario, you're out $6, but please consider trying it. Ian, you were going to say something?
Dude, magnesium's fascinating. It's at the center of every chlorophyll molecule, like the basis of green plant life, the chlorophyll that takes sunlight and converts it into energy. You got to look up the chlorophyll molecule. It's pretty wild. At the very center is just one magnesium. Like that's the basis of probably converting sunlight into energy.
That's interesting.
Or part of it.
Well, and coming back to what you were saying about go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, well, finish that thought, because then I wanted to ask you what Ian had asked you earlier, but please finish that thought, Jake.
Okay. What you were saying about the food and about the preservatives and all the chemicals, the pharmaceutical drugs and stuff like that, and how that affects the biome of the body and the endocrineal system and all that stuff. These are the chemical veils that have been placed over our minds. And those chemical veils are blocking out the collective objective universe and keeping us in a personal subjective universe or a collective subjective universe. And the cell phone towers, the cell phones, the Wi-Fi towers, all these frequencies and the propaganda that is being pumped through them is like an electromagnetic veil that is once again controlling our collective consciousness, keeping us in a collective subjective universe or a personal subjective universe. And it's when all of these things are purged from us and our system. Like if we go out into nature for a prolonged period of time, like going on a camping trip or something, our view of reality is totally different because we're not surrounded by these things. We're not consuming these things on a regular basis. And so the veils begin to get lifted, and then the collective objective universe begins to get introduced. And this is why I think that if we're really going to talk about how to change society for the better, then it is a multi-leveled, multi-layered approach where we introduce people into nature. We get people to do like survival training. We get people to consume, if they're ready and willing and able, to consume things like psychedelic mushrooms or, ayahuasca or cannabis in nature, in a tribal shamanic setting, in a ceremonial setting, so that they can begin to fathom and grasp that they do not know what reality is, because what they've been handed is an artificial construct, a social construct that is profiting less than 1% of the population at their expense and the expense of nature.
Ian had asked earlier, for those who are interested, Jake had been on the show earlier. We had a long discussion about his experiences after January 6th, his prison term, and what the government had done to him. Ian had asked earlier, Jake, what your current status is now. Can you tell people legally what you can and can't do, and how can they contribute to, how can they find out more about your campaign?
I am on supervised release. That is basically what a lot of people call probation, but it's called supervised release. And that means that I am unable to leave the state of Arizona without probation officer approval. Now, my probation officer has given me the clearance that if I wanted to say go to Austin, like, what you were talking about last time, Michael, and, do a podcast or something like that, I am now able to do so. I just have to submit the paperwork, and then he will, pass it along and get it approved, etc. I just have to say where I'm going, who I'm going to be with, how long I'm going to be there, how I'm getting there, how I'm getting back, all that stuff.
I got a guest bedroom here for you. Assuming this doesn't result in them breaking down my door and so on and getting audited, and you laugh, but I don't know that that's, you know what I mean?
Dude, in this day and age, I know.
But you've got a welcome mat here for you. So, and we could go to the Comedy Mothership. That would be a lot of fun as well. But please go. Ian, you're going to say something?
Oh yeah, I'd love to ask you, Jacob, if it's not, and you feel free to not answer anything, but what was life like in prison?
Well, Ian, that's the whole other episode we did. We did a whole other hour.
I want to hear.
Please go watch
it. I can sum it up in one sentence. It really sucked, and I didn't like it.
Was solitary like horrible, mind-bending horror, or was it like
it was paradise?
Oh no, dude! It was.
It's literally
absolutely
torture.
Terrible. The mind. So to the cognitive system, social isolation or solitary confinement is the same thing as being starved and sleep deprived. So it is soft torture, and it was very, very difficult. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. And I've gone through over 100 hours worth of tattoos. I've been through mental and emotional abuse as a child, even some physical. I've eaten 9 grams of mushrooms, solitary confinement. Yeah. Tell me about it. Not anymore, not anymore. But that cognitive dissonance, what's interesting is that cognitive dissonance for me came when I was like 17 years old, and my grandfather showed me a documentary on 9/11 and the questions surrounding the official narrative, the role of the Bush family, and the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, and all that stuff. And then once I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like, everything I believed is a lie. Fox News is full of shit. And, what is Rush Limbaugh doing telling his 40 million, listeners all this malarkey? Because there's certain things that he said that I agreed with. And then so because I agreed with those things, I realized, I thought, oh, well, maybe I also have to agree with this stuff too. What he's saying makes sense. But it's like, no, dude, no.
Yeah. He was great at package dealing.
Was that documentary Loose Change by any chance?
I don't remember the title. It was like 1.5 to 2 hours. And it wasn't even so much like developing a theory on what happened. It was just showing all of the questions of the official narrative and all the holes that were in the official narrative, like Building 7, WTF, mate, and the Pentagon. Like, hold on a second. There's no plane wreckage there. And then they also talked about the $2.3 trillion that went missing from the defense budget, how it is that all of these locations had the information regarding that $2.3 trillion, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't remember what it was.
I'm big on like just physics. Like, I'm into physics. And when I saw the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, like talking about there's like 1,600 architects and engineers around Earth being like, well, the way the buildings fall in near free fall indicates a controlled demolition of the building. Like, and this is architect after engineer after engineer after engineer being like, that indicates a controlled demolition. That near free fall speed that building 1 and 2 are falling at indicates the supports are blown out. And I was like, I'm not going to pretend like real knowledge isn't real. Like, I am open. I don't want to believe it, but that is the physical truth.
Okay.
So,
and that was the same thing for me when it came to the physics. It's like the physics are undeniable. And when you see there's like explosions coming out of the windows as it's like going down, it's like, and then Building 7, I'm sorry, Michael, I see that you want to say something.
What I'm going to say guys, we're going to take a moment and we're going to go to the members only exclusive part where subscribers at malice.locals.com send in questions for the both of you. Okay. So people can head over there. Gentlemen, we're running out of time. Ian, what has been Jake's favorite part of this interview?
Probably the green screen, getting all set up, breaking a little sweat. The dog barking was very real. I loved that part as Jake.
You are welcome.
Hold on to your jingle bells. Pluto TV has all your holiday favorites for free. Enjoy Christmas classics like Scrooge with Bill Murray or Last Holiday with Queen Latifah. Plus, dive into festive channels like Holiday Movie Favorites by Lifetime or Hallmark Movies and more. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming holiday favorites on live channels and on demand. With thousands of free movies and TV shows, Pluto TV is your home for the holidays. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.